All right, so you've brought us the Book of Mosiah for this deep dive. And not just any edition. We're talking the 1830 edition.
Yeah.
This thing's like a big deal even within the Book of Mormon, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a pivotal book. It's not just, a straightforward history, although it does chronicle the Nephite civilization, but it's more like, think of it as a turning point in their history where every decision has these huge consequences. And what makes it so compelling, at least to me, is that it really gets into the nitty-gritty of those decisions. We see the human side of these big spiritual events.
Right, because there's a lot of drama packed in here. I mean, we're talking kings, prophecies, potential downfalls. Where do we even start?
Well, it all begins in a surprisingly peaceful kingdom. You might expect turmoil, but Mosiah starts with King Benjamin, a leader who brought stability and prosperity to his people.
But here's the catch. He's getting old, nearing the end, and that whole question of who takes over, it looms large.
Yeah, the good old succession crisis. Even us non-royals can relate to that on some level. How do you make sure that what you built, the values you hold dear, continue on after you're gone?
Exactly. And for King Benjamin, this is where those plates of brass come in. They're not just some ancient artifacts to him. He keeps stressing to his sons how vital these records are. The history, the commandments, everything passed down from their ancestors, it's all there.
It's their link to the past, literally.
More than that, he sees it as their spiritual lifeline. He even compares them to the Lamanites, that other group we keep bumping into throughout the Book of Mormon.
And he suggests that their separation from these records, it's a big reason for their spiritual struggles. They've lost that connection.
So the Lamanites serve as a cautionary tale, in a way. It makes you think about, what happens when we lose touch with our roots, the things that give us a sense of identity and purpose.
Absolutely. But going back to King Benjamin, it's not just about handing down physical objects, right? This guy delivers this incredibly powerful speech, a farewell address to his people, laying out the principles he hopes they'll live by. And what gets me is that we see this very human side to him in this moment.
You mean that part where he's trembling?
Yes. I mean, this is the King Benjamin, known for his wisdom and strength. And yet, here he is, overwhelmed with emotion as he entrusts the future to his son, Mosiah. It just shows you the weight of true leadership, the responsibility he feels for his people, and maybe even a bit of uncertainty about what the future holds.
Yeah, you'd think having those sacred scrolls would be like, problem solved, right? But Mosiah, it doesn't shy away from how tough it can be to actually live up to those ideals. Case in point, we meet this guy, Zeniff, who's got ambition in spades, but also this almost obsessive desire to retake land from, yep, you guessed it, the Lamanites.
This is where the storytelling in Mosiah gets really clever, I think. On the surface, it's like new king, new adventure, but Zeniff's story, it's like King Benjamin's warnings are playing out in real time. Almost like a cautionary tale within the larger narrative,
Because wanting what was lost, that desire to set things right, that's pretty universal, right? But there's that fine line between ambition and, obsession. Zeniff, he seems to straddle that line.
He does, and his story shows exactly how that can go wrong, even with good intentions. See, Zeniff, he manages to strike a deal with the Lamanite king, gets permission to live in this land, the land of Lehi Nephi. Seemed like a win until...
There's always an until, right?
Right, and what unfolds is actually pretty savvy on the Lamanite king's part. Instead of all-out war, he uses a much more subtle tactic. Burdens, hefty taxes. It's the slow squeeze chipping away at the Nephites from the inside out.
Man, that feels oddly familiar, doesn't it? The whole using economic and social pressure as a form of control. It's not just ancient history, sadly.
Exactly, and that's what makes this more than just a story about the past. Mosiah, through stories like Zeniff's, it's tapping into these timeless patterns of power dynamics, manipulation. It's human nature on repeat.
And that cycle King Benjamin warned about, it starts playing out almost to a T. The Nephites, they find some success under Zeniff, things are looking up, but that's when things get dicey.
Complacency creeps in, then comes the pride, and suddenly that grip on righteousness, it loosens. They become, just like King Benjamin predicted, vulnerable.
So it's not just outside threats like the Lamanites, right?
Yeah.
It's about the internal stuff, too. That struggle to stay true to your values, especially when times are good, that's when it's hardest.
You hit the nail on the head. And that brings us to a leader who seems to embody that struggle. King Noah. Talk about a 180 from his predecessors. Palaces, feasts, ignoring those prophetic warnings. He's almost a textbook case of how to lose your way.
And this is where Mosiah really grabs you. Because, let's face it, there's that guilty pleasure of watching a train wreck unfold and Noah's reign. Total train wreck.
It's a classic for a reason. But beyond the drama, Noah's reign, it gives us a lot to think about. He shows us what happens when power goes unchecked, the allure of wealth and indulgence, and yeah, the consequences of ignoring those warning signs. We all get them.
And smack dab in the middle of this mess walks Abinadi.
Yeah.
This guy's intense, does not hold back, accusing Noah and his whole court of wickedness. No sugarcoating there.
Abinadi's role is crucial. He's that unwavering voice of truth. The one who isn't afraid to speak truth to power, no matter the cost. And the fact that he's willing to stand up to King Noah, even though he knows it might be the end for him, it speaks volumes about his conviction.
And it costs him. Big time. They were not fans of his message. He ends up burned at the stake, but not before delivering this chilling prophecy.
It's hard to forget that image of Abinadi engulfed in flames. It sticks with you.
It's brutal, for sure. His death, it isn't the end of his impact, though. Remember Alma, one of Noah's priests? Abinadi's words, they really get Ting. He becomes a believer while everyone else is rejecting the message.
So even in the midst of all this oppression, with Noah's excesses and Abinadi's tragic end, there's this little spark of hope. Alma's conversion, it's a game changer. It shows that even in the darkest times, something good can take root. His story becomes this testament to how powerful individual belief can be even when you're surrounded by opposition. And that leads us to yet another exodus.
Talk about a 1-2 punch. It's like just when you thought things couldn't get more intense, we get not one but two groups running for their lives. Another exodus.
It's amazing how the Book of Mosiah does this, weaving these parallel stories together. We've got Alma and his people trying to get away from King Noah and all that mess.
Right, and then on the other side, you've got, well, Noah's son, Limhi.
Right, Limhi. They're stuck, forced into this life of servitude.
So both groups, they're trying to break free from the Lamanites, but their starting points couldn't be more different. What connects them then? Was it just circumstance or is there something more?
It's deeper than circumstance. It's their faith, I think. Both groups, even though they're facing these incredibly tough situations, they hold on to this belief that God will deliver them. It becomes this common thread, this strength that helps them get through it all, even though their challenges are unique.
And those challenges, they take them to some pretty specific places. We keep hearing about the waters of Mormon, the land of Elam. It's like Mosiah is really specific about the geography. It's not just random.
Right. For people who believe in the Book of Mormon, these places, they aren't just names on a map. They become sacred, like the waters of Mormon. That's where Alma establishes the first church after they escape from King Noah. It becomes this symbol of a fresh start, of baptism and being spiritually reborn.
It makes you think about how certain places, they can take on these layers of meaning over time, like touchstones for a community's beliefs. It's more than just a place. But in this case, it's not enough just to find a safe haven. They're still in danger, still trying to outsmart the Lamanites.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. We get this story of pure resourcefulness. Remember Gideon, one of Limhi's people?
Yeah, vaguely.
So he comes up with this brilliant plan to escape. But the crazy thing is, it depends on exploiting a weakness that the Lamanites have, their own weakness.
Don't tell me it involves a party. One too many drinks.
You got it. The Lamanites, they're having this huge feast, lots of celebrating, and they get carried away.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And Gideon, clever guy, he uses that to secure their freedom.
It's like the tables have turned. Their oppressors become their accidental saviors in a way.
Right. It makes you realize that it's not always as simple as good guys and bad guys. Even in these stories where there seems to be a clear line, things get complicated.
And sometimes those twists and turns of fate, they lead you right back home. They both make it back to Zarahemla eventually. Everyone can breathe easy. Happy ending.
Not so fast. It's a reunion, sure, but it's bittersweet. It wasn't an easy journey. They suffered losses along the way. Not everyone made it back.
Yeah, good point. It reminds you that these stories, they're not just adventures. There's real loss, real sacrifice woven into them.
And even when there's this semblance of peace, the big questions, they don't go away. How do you govern? How do you create a just society? And Mosiah, when it comes time for him to choose a successor, he makes a decision, a surprising one.
Let me guess he doesn't pick a successor.
You're good. He breaks the mold. Instead of keeping the whole kingship thing going, passing it down, he says, we're doing things differently. He proposes a system of judges, putting the emphasis on righteous leadership.
So instead of bloodlines, it becomes about seeking wisdom and justice from, well, a higher power.
Exactly. It's a totally different way of thinking about leadership. And to really drive this home, Mosiah's sons, they step up, but not to claim a throne. They've been on their own journey of transformation, and now they dedicate themselves to sharing God's word, even venturing into Lamanite territory.
Talk about a cliffhanger. But it fits with the whole message of the book, doesn't it? That faith has this power to change people, to change the world, even when things seem impossible.
It makes you think, if they can face those challenges, what are we capable of?
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today. King Benjamin's warnings, Zeniff's struggles, Abinadi's sacrifice, those daring escapes.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what's in store for those sons of Mosiah.
Oh, definitely.
For everyone listening, we'd love to hear your take on all this. What stood out to you? And let's keep the conversation going. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.